Beverly Hills. Dean Martin's daughter Deanna was getting married. The ballroom was packed. 300 guests, including Hollywood legends, casino owners, musicians, and family. Frank Sinatra sat front and center, Sammy Davis Jr. beside him. The ceremony had been flawless. Dinner was served, and everyone knew Dean would give a speech. That's what fathers do at their daughter's wedding. But when the orchestra leader signaled Dean, something felt different. Dean Martin, the coolest man in America, stood, wiped his mouth with a napkin, and approached the microphone. Nothing ever seemed to rattle Dino. He had performed for presidents, mob bosses, and millions of fans. Nervous? Unthinkable. Losing composure? Impossible. Yet when Dean grabbed that microphone, he paused. 5 full seconds of silence. The ballroom went still. Frank leaned forward. Sammy stopped mid-bite. All 300 eyes were on him. And then he spoke. The first words shocked everyone. "You know, I was never a good father." The king of cool, the man who never showed weakness, was about to do something entirely unexpected, something raw and real. By the time he finished, 300 people were in tears, including Frank Sinatra. To understand why Dean Martin's wedding speech had such impact, you need to know who he was in 1971. Not just a singer or actor, Dean was an icon, the embodiment of effortless cool. He had been famous for over 2 decades, conquering every stage: records, movies, television, live performances. His TV variety show topped the ratings. His albums sold millions. His films made fortunes. And through it all, Dean maintained a carefully crafted image. Nothing could shake him. Nothing could faze him. He was relaxed, in control, always cool. His catchphrase, "Ring and ding, baby," perfectly captured his philosophy. Life is fun. Don't take it too seriously, and enjoy the ride. But that carefully crafted persona came at a cost, and nowhere was that cost clearer than in Dean's relationships with his children. Dean had 7 children from 2 marriages. His first marriage, to Betty McDonald, produced 4 children: Stephen, Craig, Claudia, and Gail. Actually, Barbara, Deanna, and Dean Paul, or Dino, were also children from his first marriage. His second marriage, to Jean Bajer, added 3 more: Dean Paul Martin, Richie Martin, and Gina Martin. Deanna, born in 1948, was Dean's daughter from his first marriage. In 1971, at 21, she was about to marry Terry Guerin. Growing up as Dean Martin's daughter was complicated, not because he was cruel, but because he was almost always absent. Dean's career demanded long stretches on the road: Las Vegas shows, concert tours, movie shoots across the country, and television tapings. Deanna later reflected on her childhood. "I loved my father deeply, but I saw him in person maybe 3 or 4 months out of the year. The rest of the time he was a voice on the phone, a signature on a birthday card that arrived late, a promise to attend my school play that never materialized because he was filming in Texas." Still, she never complained. She tried to understand that her father's career was demanding, that he was providing for the family, that millions of people wanted his time and attention. But it hurt all the same. Every missed birthday, every empty seat at her school events, every explanation to friends: "My dad couldn't make it, he's working." By 1971, Deanna had made peace with it. She accepted that this was who her father was: a brilliant entertainer, a provider, but not always present in the way she had hoped. Her wedding was set for June 13, 1971, at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Deanna and her mother, Betty, handled most of the planning. Dean had offered to pay for everything, and he did, but the details were largely managed without him. He was busy with his TV show, his Vegas commitments, and his life. The ceremony itself was elegant and traditional. Deanna wore a flowing white gown, Terry a sharp tuxedo. The vows were exchanged smoothly, without a hitch. Then came the reception. The Beverly Hills ballroom was stunning. White tablecloths, carefully arranged flowers, a live orchestra, and 300 guests, a mix of family, friends, and Hollywood royalty, filled the space. Frank Sinatra was, of course, in attendance, seated near Dean. The two had been close friends since the Rat Pack. Days. Sammy Davis Jr. sat beside Frank, Joey Bishop at a nearby table, and other celebrities, actors, singers, producers, mingled throughout the room. Dinner began around 7:30 p.m. Champagne flowed freely, laughter and conversation buzzing through the elegant space. It was exactly what a wedding reception should be: joyful, celebratory, full of life. Around 8:30 p.m., the orchestra leader, Mario, who had worked with Dean for years, caught Dean's eye and gave a subtle nod toward the microphone. It was time for the father of the bride's speech. Dean acknowledged him with a nod, wiped his mouth with a napkin, sipped his drink, and made his way to the microphone. The room began to quiet. Guests nudged each other. Dean was about to speak. Conversations faded, attention sharpening on the front of the room. Frank Sinatra leaned forward, smiling, expecting the usual Dean Martin performance, perhaps a few jokes, maybe a song. Classic Dean. Sammy smiled too, confident that Dean would deliver. After all, he had done so countless times before, always bringing laughter, always stealing the show. Deanna sat at the bride's table with her new husband, Terry, watching her father approach the microphone. She smiled on the outside, but inside, a knot of nerves twisted in her stomach. Not because she worried about what Dean might say, but because this moment, her father standing there, giving her away, speaking at her wedding, felt surreal. After so many years of absence, he was finally present for one of the biggest moments of her life. Dean reached the microphone, adjusted it slightly, and looked out at the 300 faces turned toward him. Then he did something completely unexpected. He just stood there. 5 full seconds passed. No words, just silence. The pause was unusual. Dean Martin didn't do awkward silences. He was smooth, rehearsed, professional. But this felt different, like he was gathering courage, like he was deciding whether to say what had been on his mind for years. Frank Sinatra's smile faded slightly. Something was off. Sammy Davis Jr. put down his fork. The entire ballroom held its breath. Then Dean spoke. His voice was quieter than usual, not the projected confidence of a performer, just a plain, honest voice. "I was never a good father." The words hung in the air. The ballroom froze. No one had expected this. Frank's eyes widened. Sammy's mouth fell open. Guests exchanged confused glances. Deanna felt her heart stop. "Dad, what are you doing?" But Dean kept going. "Deanna, baby, I was always on the road, always in another city, another stage, another hotel. I missed your first steps. Your mother told me about them on the phone. I missed your first day of school. I missed your 6th grade play, where you were Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. You were so excited. You called me every day for a week. 'Daddy, are you coming? Are you going to be there?' And I said yes, I promised, but I was shooting a movie in Arizona, and I didn't come." Tears streamed down Deanna's face. She had either forgotten that play or buried the memory deep inside, and now, in that moment, it came rushing back. But hearing her father say it out loud in front of everyone brought it all back. "I don't even know how many birthdays I missed. Your mother would hold the phone up to the cake while everyone sang, and I'd sing from a hotel room in Las Vegas or New York or wherever I was. And you'd say, 'Thanks, Daddy,' like it was enough, like a phone call could ever be the same as being there." The ballroom was completely silent. You could hear the soft intake of breath, a few quiet sniffles. Frank Sinatra stared at Dean with an expression no one had seen before, a mixture of shock and recognition. Frank had made the same choices, been absent for the same reasons. "But you," Dean said, pointing at Deanna, "you never complained, not once. Every time I called, you'd say, 'It's okay, Daddy, I understand, you're working.' Every time I missed something important, you'd smile and say, maybe next time. You made it easy for me to keep missing things because you never made me feel guilty." Dean paused, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "But I should have felt guilty. I should have been there. And I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." Deanna was sobbing now. Terry wrapped an arm around her, but her body trembled with emotion. Dean took a slow breath and went on. "Today, I'm giving you to another man, to Terry, and I see the way he looks at you. I see how he can't take his eyes off you. I see that he'll be there for you in ways I wasn't, and for that, I'm grateful. But I'll be honest, I'm jealous, because he gets to do what I should have done. He gets to be there every day, every moment." The ballroom filled with the sound of quiet crying. Grown men wiped at their eyes. Women reached for tissues. Frank Sinatra had tears streaming down his face. Sammy Davis Jr. buried his face in his hands. "But, Deanna," Dean said, his voice growing stronger now, "I want to make you a promise, right here, right now, in front of everyone." He paused. The entire room held its breath. "I can't change the past. I can't get back the birthdays, the school plays, the moments I missed. But your children, my grandchildren, I will be there for them. Every birthday, every school play, every soccer game, every piano recital, whatever they want to do. Every moment I missed with you, I'll be there for them." He looked at her, voice breaking once more. "Because you gave me something incredible, baby. You gave me a second chance. You never held grudges. You never stopped loving me. You just forgave me, even when I didn't deserve it." Dean's voice broke completely. "So, I'm going to do better starting today. I promise you, your kids will know their grandpa. Not as a voice on the phone, not as a signature on a birthday card, but as someone who shows up, who's there, who doesn't miss the important moments." He wiped his eyes again, trying to compose himself. "I love you, baby. I'm sorry I wasn't the father you deserved, but I'm so damn proud of the woman you became, despite me, not because of me." Dean set the microphone down. Silence fell over the ballroom, 3 full seconds of quiet. And then Deanna stood. She didn't walk, she ran across the room to her father. When she reached him, she threw her arms around his neck and buried her face in his shoulder. Dean held her tight. Both of them cried openly. The ballroom erupted, not with ordinary applause, but with emotional, cathartic clapping. 300 people witnessing raw, honest humanity. Frank Sinatra stood, tears streaming down his face as he clapped. Sammy Davis Jr. was on his feet, openly sobbing. Joey Bishop pressed his hand to his heart. Dean and Deanna held each other for a full minute, neither wanting to let go. When they finally separated, Dean kissed his daughter's forehead. "I love you, baby." "I love you too, Daddy," Deanna whispered. Dean returned to his table. The applause continued. He sank into his seat, burying his face in his hands for a moment, then looked up at Frank. Frank reached over and squeezed Dean's shoulder. No words, just a gesture that said, "I understand. I've been there too." The rest of the reception was deeply emotional. Guests kept approaching Dean, thanking him for his honesty. Several fathers admitted, "I needed to hear that." One man said, "I'm calling my daughter tomorrow. I've been putting it off." But the true impact of Dean's speech unfolded over the years that followed because he kept his promise. When Deanna had her first child in 1973, Dean was at the hospital, not just visiting afterward, but there during labor, pacing the waiting room, the first to hold his granddaughter. For every birthday, every school play, every piano recital, Dean was present. He reduced his touring schedule, turned down movie roles that would take him away for months, and restructured his Vegas commitments so he could be home more often. Dean Martin, the king of cool, the man whose career was built on appearing unbothered, became the most devoted grandfather anyone had ever seen. His grandchildren didn't grow up with Dean Martin, the superstar. They grew up with Grandpa Dino, a man who showed up, who played with them, who was truly present. Deanna later reflected on the transformation. "After my wedding, my father became a different person. Not publicly, the world still saw Dean Martin the entertainer, but privately with family, he became the father and grandfather he had always wanted to be, but had been too busy to be before. He couldn't change the past, but he changed the future, and that meant everything." In 1987, Dean's son, Dean Paul, Deanna's brother, died in a plane crash. The loss devastated Dean. He became more reclusive, performed less, and retreated from the public eye. But even in his grief, he kept the promise he had made to Deanna. He was there for his grandchildren. He made sure they knew they were loved and valued, and that he would always show up for them. When Dean Martin passed away on Christmas Day, 1995, his grandchildren were among his final visitors. They told him they loved him. They thanked him for always being there. And Dean, barely able to speak, smiled and whispered, "I promised your mom, and I kept it." The story of Dean Martin's wedding speech became family legend. No recordings exist, no video survives, yet everyone who was there remembered it vividly, and everyone agreed it was the most powerful moment they had ever witnessed. Not because Dean sang beautifully, or made everyone laugh, or oozed his usual charm and cool, but because for the first time in his public life, Dean Martin was vulnerable. He admitted failure, he apologized, he made a promise, and most importantly, he kept it. Frank Sinatra later reflected, "Dean's speech at Deanna's wedding changed how I thought about fatherhood. I'd made the same mistakes, been absent, prioritized career, but Dean had the guts to admit it publicly and the strength to change. I tried to do the same. Too late for some of my kids, but better late than never." The lesson of Dean Martin's wedding speech isn't about perfection. It's about honesty. It's about admitting when you failed and having the courage to do better, even when you can't undo the past. Dean spent the first 23 years of Deanna's life being largely absent, but he spent the next 24 years making up for it, not by erasing what he missed, because he couldn't, but by being fully present for what came next. That's the real power of that wedding speech. Dean didn't just apologize, he committed to change, and he followed through. That is the difference between an empty apology and a meaningful one. Dean Martin proved that it's never too late to become the person your family needs you to be. It's never too late to keep a promise. It's never too late to show up, even if you've missed everything that came before.